Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or we've had a big setback? On this podcast, I'll be talking to some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on this planet who at their worst learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up and creating everything from nothing. From 2005 to 2008, Jason Bartlett was on top of the world. A successful marketer and a great amount of wisdom with structure, he attracted success. He had the money, the cars, the friends, everything he thought he wanted. A wedding in Cabo was one of his last successful memories of that time. He describes his life after that as the bottom falling out from under him. When the housing market crashed in 2008, lenders were pulling out, he lost employees, and his fantasy life started crumbling down. Now, he remembers a pivotal moment of looking at his Rolex watch that he had won and calling a friend to see if he could loan him money to take that watch as collateral so he could help him. The friend never called him back. Jason found himself thinking, wow, maybe it was all fake. Maybe I was just lucky the first time. Jason turned it all around by staying focused on helping others turn around their hardships, and in turn, he turned around his. Today, Jason owns Level Financing, and his mission there is to help people formulate and execute an ethical plan to get them out of debt and to keep them out of debt, one in which your credit is not ruined. Join in today and learn exactly how Jason Bartlett leveled up and created everything from nothing. Today, I've got Jason Bartlett on Leveling Up. I was introduced to him by my good friend, and I was very intrigued by his story because what he does is he has a company that helps people get out of credit card debt and stay out of debt for good. Jason, thanks for being here. I'm really curious about your story and how you got into this. I know your life has not been perfect all along, and you've got a big story behind why you do this. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Natalie. Appreciate it.
So Jason, take us back. Why this? Why did you get so drawn to helping people with this particular problem?
Well, I would like to say that I sat around and thought about what I wanted to do, and this is exactly what we decided on. But this kind of came to me in a strange way. So I started out, and I was in insurance. Mm-hmm. And I was selling for a brokerage by the name of Powers and Company. We were doing contractors liability insurance and workers' comp. And I started traveling and starting to kind of get to want to know the world. And that was one of my big passions. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do it working for somebody else. It just wasn't going to give me the freedom that I wanted.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but why? It's interesting. So most people don't sit around as a kid thinking, I want to help people with credit card debt when I grow up.
So the next thing was myself and my current business partner, Tori Osborne, had decided to go out on our own. This is about the middle of 2005. I think we started planning it about the first part of 2005. And once we decided on what we were going to do, it was like kind of a coin toss. Are we going to do insurance, what I was doing, or are we going to go into mortgage? Okay. So just because of the amount of back-end work that went into the insurance, we opted to go into mortgage. And that was a very hot thing at the time. And that's what Tori was in. I had never done mortgage before. But what I thought is I could bring some marketing expertise and bring kind of a structure. He was kind of from an unstructured past and hadn't really worked in like a sales organization. He was just kind of doing referral loans and stuff. So what happened, we started up a mortgage company. This thing went from like 4 to 80 people within like a year. We thought we were on top of the world.
Before the bubble. You were right. You had the right timing before that real estate bubble.
Yeah, perfect timing, right? So we went into this and we had a lot of success early on. We were younger, so we were, spending some money and having a lot of fun and, getting the material things that we thought were really important at that time. And as fast as that thing went up, we went down to a wedding for one of our employees in 2008 of August, down in Cabo, San Lucas, came back. And this entire thing, I remember the bottom falling out of it. The loans, the lenders just pulling the plug on each and every loan that we had. and back then it was, we were doing direct mail marketing. So it was very high price marketing. You spent a lot of money. So when you got that loan in there and you got it approved, if it was to fall out, that was just devastating to your bottom line and to the revenue of the company. So this thing went down so hard that literally we met with the landlord. We were losing all our employees. It was just like a nightmare that wouldn't end,
Yeah.
And we thought, yeah.
It's,
So
as you're saying this, I'm wondering, like, it's funny because what's going on in the world right now as we're recording this is some people's first experience with the world falling apart or their life changing as they know it. To me, it feels very familiar to what went on in 2008.
It really does to me as well. And now that I'm in a different position and in one of the businesses that's going to be thriving or is thriving at the current moment, it's a weird feeling of I've been on that side where these other people are at. I feel my heart really, really goes out to them.
Yeah.
I remember sitting on my couch when the thing finally drug down to the bottom when we were in the mortgage, and I had like $200, and I was, in my big house and had, a couple nice cars and all the stuff that I'd thought I wanted. And I remember feeling just so low that I started tearing up. And I remember I had a Rolex watch that I'd won for selling $1 million of new business insurance. And I called up a friend and I asked him if I could borrow some money and he could take my watch for collateral. And he didn't even text me back.
Wow.
So that was a really weird moment. And I ended up actually calling up my adopted mom, who was my wrestling coach's wife. And she was more than happy to, help me out for the next couple months. And that's right about the time we segued into this, into getting people out of credit card debt.
So what's so interesting, like listening to you, I have chills listening because I went through the same situation in 2008, different market, different field, but same experience losing my house. And what came up for me was this big feeling of fake, like at the time. Like I remember, like you described sitting in your big house with the cars and the Rolex and no money to your name. I remember feeling fake, like, oh my gosh, who do I even ask for help because they think I'm one type of person? And what's so interesting looking back now, there were so many of us going through it, but we all thought we ran it alone.
Yeah. Natalie, you're exactly right. I remember thinking to myself, I wish I was in a 1-bedroom apartment with a mattress.
Yes.
And, some food, because this feels worse to me. And I completely felt like a fake and a fraud. Yep. Also, I all my self-doubt had creeped in, because that was the first time I'd went into business on my own. Maybe it was lucky the first time around. Maybe that was just a fluke. Maybe I wasn't good enough. There was all kinds of weird emotions that kind of came into my head at that time. It was a very difficult time.
It's before we get to what you turned around and what you created and why that's working and helping people, any words of advice for somebody going through that right now? Because for a lot of people right now, this is their reality. Like this is the first time some people are experiencing debt. This is the first time people are questioning. Think of all these hardworking people that started their own business. It was starting to take off or it was thriving, and it's like pulled away from them right now. So they're going through a lot of the emotions and feelings that you and I experienced back in 2008. What words of advice could you tell them right now? What do you want them to know?
Yeah. First and foremost, you need to be able to control your stress, and you need to be able to, stay healthy in your mind, and realize this is, working out, staying healthy, obviously, not going out and, drinking to let off the steam. That's not an option. You need to be very clear-minded. You need to know that this doesn't define you. The money part and the business part, that's just a scorecard. Mm-hmm. And this is just like a reset. And you have to truly don't let all that self-doubt and all that stuff creep in. Because if you made it one time and you had some success the first time, you will have it again as long as you don't let this break you down.
Gosh, that's so good. And it's so true, because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's almost that imposter syndrome. Like, oh, maybe it was a fluke. Maybe by accident I was successful. And I remember I was applying for this mastermind I wanted to be in after everything had fallen down, and I built my business again, and I had then struggled again, and I had these ups and downs. And I remember applying for this mastermind, and everybody in there needed to be a certain earning potential. And the person said to me, I said, well, I'm not actually earning that right now. And I felt embarrassed almost. And he said to me, if you did it once, you that's always who you are. And you'll do it again. And I remember that really stuck with me. And it was that belief in me that changed me. And I do believe that. I believe if you were creative enough, smart enough, incredible enough to do it once, you will do it again and again and again.
Exactly. I always have this like saying that when I talk with people, hey, listen, you know what? Once you do it that second time, now it's like, hey, fine, go ahead, strip me down, throw me off in the wilderness, without a shirt and, some shoes on. And I guarantee you in 4 years, I'll make something happen and I'll be back. And I'm never going to, I promise myself, if I ever go through that again, I'm never, ever, ever going to let myself doubt myself and let myself put myself through the stress and the anxiety that I did that first time around.
So good. So you decided to pivot during that, but talk to us about timing on that, because how did you go from beating yourself up, depressed, like, oh my gosh, I feel like a loser, maybe this is imposter syndrome or whatever, to I'm going to pivot and create this opportunity here. How did that happen?
Well, first of all, while we were going through this, one other big piece of advice that I can tell everyone: do not stick your head in the sand when this stuff's going on, because that's easy. Once you get into debt, once there's problems, you just want to get away from it. Don't do that. You gotta stay positive, and you gotta be persistent, whether it's calling your car loan company up, whether it's calling and negotiating with your credit cards, whether it's calling and negotiating with your, home mortgage. You can't just bury your head in the sand and let things happen. You gotta take action. You gotta take action.
Okay.
So while we were taking action and not putting our heads in the sand and just going at this like it was we were, in a war, we realized that we were able to negotiate a big portion, a lot of debts. We were able to negotiate with the banks and get settlements for, 10, 20% on the dollar.
Hey, Natalie, Jill, interrupting for one quick moment, because if you're like many people right now, especially with what's going on in the world, struggling with debt and your finances have changed, I'm going to highly recommend that you reach out to Jason's company, Level Financing, because they can help you. And they are offering a free consult to help you do debt consolidation, to save your credit, all the things, and it's free for you to talk with them. So just let them know I sent you, Natalie, Jill. You go to levelfinancing.com and they will help you out. Better that this is during the downturn. So I'm assuming this was back in 2009, around then.
Correct. 2009, okay. 2010. I mean, we really didn't come out of this thing until around 2010, 2011.
So let me ask you, sorry, before, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to understand clearly. So what made you and your partner able to do this better than like somebody doing it on their own? Because somebody might think, well, why would I have needed somebody to help me? Can't I just call on my own?
Yeah. For starters, these negotiations and these settlements happen at specific times. Typically what happens is the credit card company like American Express or Capital One, they sell it off to secondary markets, and they'll sell it off to, say, American Express sells it off to Zwicker law firm. Okay. And you have to know exactly when the right moment is to go ahead and settle out the debt. You can do this you can do this by yourself. You could rebuild your car engine by yourself. You can do a lot of things by yourself. But do you want to do this? So I always tell people we've got so many different options on these programs. Plus, we don't just do debt settlement. We don't just settle out debt. We do personal loans. So a lot of times we'll go and we'll start settling out debt for 6 months, and then we'll do a personal loan back to that person and use that money to settle out all the debt. Now their payment will be 60% of whatever their minimum payment was. And they'll have one loan payment, and now their credit score shoots up. And then I can show them how to get back in a position where they're going to win again, where they're getting the A financing, where they're getting the good rates, where they don't have the beat up credit. Jason, we also have a debt. Yeah.
Do people have to have defaulted to do this? So there's a lot of people that are just carrying a huge balance right now, and it's stressful because they're paying a lot in interest but I'm wondering, like, if you've got a big balance with Amex or Visa or whoever, and you're still paying the minimum or you're still paying on time. So I'm assuming they haven't sold it off yet. So how does that work?
Yeah. That's when we go, and I have another program that's a debt management program. And you don't go late to your creditors. You make the payments on time. And typically what they'll do is they'll lower the rate between 2 and 9%. So rather than having that compounding annual interest where you stick in debt for 20 years and make that minimum payment, you make that same minimum payment and I'll have the clear light at the end of the tunnel and you'll be out of debt in 4 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Okay. Now, does it always ruin your credit or not always?
So that's the biggest fear and that's the biggest holdup that people have. Take that loan, the hybrid settlement loan program I talked about earlier. What we found, I have examples and I can give them. I can't specifically talk about anybody's credit because everybody's situation's different and I can't promise anything because that's just not the way to do it. It's not responsible. But what I've found is even on the settlement programs, once the debt is paid as settled, okay, even if it's for a lesser amount, the credit score shoots back up. The FICO 9 made a rule, after 2008, and after a lot of people went down, the FICO 9 made a rule is once it's paid as settled, even at a lesser amount, it shows on your credit as paid as settled, but your score usually shoots back up to maybe a little bit lower, or we've even had them come in a little higher at the end of the program. So this is like one of the biggest fears that holds everybody back from doing this. And what I like to do is I used to provide 3 examples of customers that we have, or I'll provide 100 examples, it doesn't matter. So that's not something. Getting out of debt's the most important part. Bleeding out 70% of your payment towards the interest and fees. That's the part that you should be concerned about. Credit scores and credit can always be repaired in a very short amount of time. I could get your credit back up and running as long as it doesn't have a bankruptcy on it within probably 8 to 12 months.
Wow, that's impressive. Now, do you think, Jason, times like this right now, because I keep thinking about this, like right now in these hard times, I see American Express, and I've heard a number of stories about people being really open to negotiating right now. So like a lot of credit card companies waiving interest for the month, or mortgages. Some of the mortgages are not helpful, but some are. Do you find that this is an ideal time to negotiate if you're right now when it's hard times for everybody, or is that not the ideal time to negotiate?
No, there's going to be some great settlements and some great negotiating going on, but don't get forbearance confused with forgiveness. Okay. Forbearance is where they just go and tack the payment onto the back of the loan and all the interest and all that stuff goes. So it's nice to get a little break for a couple months. Maybe, you're temporary on unemployment and you do that, but it's definitely not a solution. What we call that is a Band-Aid.
Okay.
And remember, the credit card companies, when you just go directly to them, they're always going to try to do the Band-Aid thing and just keep you back in the hamster wheel, as I call it, and where you're going to be running and paying the interest and fees and paying 70%. They don't want to have you come and team up with us and then have you go head on to where we're like, no, we're going to get you out of debt in 4 years. Here's what's up. We're going to get your interest rates reduced, or we're going to negotiate down the principal.
Now, what if you have savings in other places, or you have money invested in the stock market and now you're carrying a credit card debt? Does that affect your ability to be able to negotiate? Because do they see those other assets and say you can't negotiate if you already have them someplace else?
Typically they don't. Typically this is just in order to negotiate a settlement. Obviously, you're going to have to go late. They're not going to do it while you're paying on time. Okay. But I can get you into a debt management program. If somebody wasn't comfortable going late and they were in a position where they can afford their minimum, we can do a debt management program and a hardship without somebody, not having, they can have stock money in the stock market. They can have, a home. It can make it a little more challenging at times because there has to be some type of hardship, but a hardship is loosely defined and there's different types of hardships. I would never recommend, cleaning out your savings and doing all this stuff to go ahead and pay off high interest credit card debt.
Well, and I think that especially now, even there's some people that are really doing well financially with what's going on in the world. And I'm certainly not in your role or a financial advisor, so I shouldn't be giving advice. But as a friend, I've given the advice of like, keep cash on hand right now because there's just so much changing right now. I think rather than just throwing all your money at a credit card, paying that off, like it's important to keep cash at hand, I would think. So it
100%.
sounds like it'd be more important to work with someone like you to figure, to work at a different solution.
100%. First and foremost, you got to get a good spending plan together. If you're still spending plans off, that's never a good thing. You need food, shelter, transportation. Those are the three basic things you should be focused on. And, if it becomes between your food and your shelter or your car payment, don't go paying off your credit card debt.
Got it.
And
yeah.
When somebody tries to pay off their credit card debt on their own, it's almost like makes me go crazy, because I just know that there's so much, forgiveness on the interest rates and different things you can do to really get that down. And I would never feel guilty. The banks have made plenty of money off of everybody. 70% goes towards interest and fees. So it's, it's only time that they give up a little at the end, so you can get out of this, basically this little trap that they get you in.
Wow. That's really good to know. Wow. This is super helpful. How do people, if this is resonating, I know that a lot of people listening, this is resonating, whether they're new to being in debt right now with what's going on in the world, or they've been carrying it for a while. And it's just to a lot of people, it feels like an added stress. Like maybe they had debt and now what's going on in the world, they don't have the same income. What do you suggest they do? Who do they reach out to? How do they talk to you or your team, or what do they do?
Yeah. So we're on Instagram at Level Financing.
Okay.
We're at levelfinancing.com is our website. Call in and speak with one of our representatives. And it's no obligation. There's no cost to talk to anybody. So
somebody will actually strategize with you without charging you.
Yeah, exactly. You can strategize the whole thing. And then at the end, the only thing that never makes sense for anybody to do is just keep doing what they're doing. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Even somebody that's in a really bad position, I might tell them, hey, listen, I'm going to set you up with my good friend, Vince Rinda, and have you go and do a bankruptcy, because you don't have any income and you have a ton of debt. Let's figure out the best solution. But I can tell you, unless you have a rich relative or a bunch of money on hand, the best solution is never to keep paying the interest and fees and just keep paying that minimum payment.
Wow.
It's never the solution.
Good.
It's just pure math,
Yeah, this was actually really helpful today. I really appreciate this. If you guys, I think it's totally worth checking this out. I did not know Jason before this call, but my best friend is the one who referred me to him, and I trust her. so I'm putting my name behind him.
Yes.
So definitely reach out to, if you are somebody struggling with this, or you're in the situation and you're curious, I encourage you to check them out. Thank you I think this was incredibly helpful today. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for having me.
I learned so much interviewing Jason. And one thing that he said to me a number of times on the interview and before the interview was the only thing not to do when you're in debt is to keep doing what you're doing, because there's so many solutions out there. So listen, he's willing to really help my listeners of Leveling Up here. He's willing to really help you. So he's offering a free strategy session to see how they can help. All you'll want to do is mention that I sent you. So mention Natalie Jill sent you when booking, and you can go to levelfinancing.com to book that strategy call. Thanks for leveling up with us today. Please share this episode if you found it helpful so others can join in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on future shows. And if you would leave me a 5-star review, I appreciate those so much. I read all of them, and it's how I know that I'm giving you information that you find valuable. And come interact with me over on Instagram at Natalie Jill Fit. I read all the direct messages and comments over there. Make it a great day, creating everything from nothing.